This is the Tree of Life, Season 23, Chapter 2. In this episode, we will be comparing preference shifting and confirmation bias in terms of the impulses subject to affirmation and negation. To begin, in preference shifting, we see a reverse substitution event followed by a substitution event. That is, a digital structure transforms to an analog structure, then back to a digital structure. The idea is that within the analog structure, there are substitutionary impulses, which represent two sets. In the originating digital structure, one of those sets is described by affirmation of impulse 1 and negation of impulse not 1. In the final digital structure, we have affirmation of impulse 2 and negation of impulse not 2. But in the analog transitionary structure, we have affirmation of impulse 2 and negation of impulse 1. In this way, impulse 2 is a subset of not impulse 1. And impulse 1 is a subset of not impulse 2. Thus, in the transformation of the digital structure to analog and back again, in preference shifting, we see the extraction of impulse 2 from not impulse 1, and the nesting of impulse 1 into not impulse 2. The process of extraction occurs via the incoming consciousness, through emotional coupling, quasi-perfect phase linking, and through weak phase linking in the subsequent substitution event. Thus, we can say that emotional coupling is extractive to an impulse in a negational set. And we can say that weak phase linking nests an impulse in a negational set. Now, in confirmation bias, we see that the negated impulse within the analog structure is some impulse, which is within both sets corresponding to not impulse 1 and not impulse 2. Thus, rather than an extractive process within reverse substitution, what we are seeing is the negation of some subset of impulse not 1 common between the negated sets, not 1 and not 2. That is to say, that in confirmation bias, impulse 2 is extracted from not impulse 1 and affirmed, but some subset of impulse not 1 remains negated within impulse not 2. In other words, there is a union which describes both not 1 and not 2. From this we can see that the relationship between impulses in particular sets determines the resulting phenomenological characteristics of an experience. Likewise, we see that the coupling or weak phase linking of particular bodily rhythms plays a role in the extractive process, and the nesting process of these impulses in particular sets. We see this since the emotional coupling of reverse substitution usually arises out of some common affirmational rhythm. Just as the weak phase linking arises out of compelling acquiescence with some rhythm. That's the end of the podcast for today.